All right, guys, I have Coach Brian Krenzelak or Krenzelak?
Krenzelak.
Krenzelak, right. I have Coach Brian here, head coach of Canon-Mac. How are you doing today, Coach?
Doing excellent, riding high, right? Just won the Whippeal Championship, first time in 10 years for our program, so we're excited. We're departing today at noon for the state tournament, so these are good days.
You guys weren't favored to beat Waynesburg, were you?
No, Waynesburg has proven over the last, really over several decades, but these last 4 years, they've been the team to beat in the Whippeal. They did an excellent job. I was a junior high and youth coach at Canon-Mcmillan for a long time, so I saw what they were building for a decade there, and hats off to them. They're an excellent program, excellent families, coaches, community. But yeah, coming into the season, they were three-time returning champs. You know, heavily favored to win again, four in a row. And like I told our local media, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was important to me to preserve our record of four in a row championships, the ones we attained 10, 11, 12, 13. That was on my mind. But we worked hard all year. And I didn't tell the kids, those types of motivations. I just kept them, my motto is always the same, like improve every day. So, we're just trying to improve as individuals. And I knew if the little pieces, the individuals improved, then the team would improve.
What was the key factor to beating Waynesburg that day?
That particular day, really just my coaching staff and the kids buying into everything. If you're wanting to look for individual matches, points, when you have a 28-28 match criteria D, there's probably 20 different things you could point to and say, oh, it was this, it was that. There was, right off the bat, we start off at 172, we lose the coin flip. So, we had a strategy if we won the coin flip, and we had a strategy if we lost the coin flip, and we lost it. And the strategy there is you put your horse on the mat, and our horse at 72 is Matt Furman, ranked second in the state. Of course, they have number one in the state, number one in the nation,
Yep.
Rocco Welsh. They put him on the mat. Last year, Furman got teched by him a couple times and majored once. So I'm sure they're feeling very good going to that. And Furman gets the opening takedown. So I think at that moment, our whole bench just really got pumped up. Our fans, that was a huge moment. Even though, of course, Rocco is able to start getting on his in his groove and start getting his takedowns and his points. It's hard to keep that kid down for long, Rocco Welsh. But that opening takedown was a huge spark for our team that day. You can go all the way down the line. They bumped up Brody Evans on Gino Calgaro. I'm sure they're expecting a win there. Gino Calgaro came up big, getting three very nice takedowns. You come back around, our lightweight, our backup 6-pounder gets a pin. Of course, Mazenko beat Sheftik earlier in the year, so we're hoping that happens again. That didn't happen. So now the tide's turning again. We get we get a major 14-1 from DMI. We get a big pin because it was about to be a tech from Ryder Joseph at 127. He just wouldn't be denied and kept, meddling on his back. Simone, albeit with an injured right knee, we bump Benny up on him, and we get a decision win there. Hats off to Andrew Benny. I know it's been pretty widely broadcasted. After the second injury timeout, Simone was literally hopping around on one foot. And Andrew told us during the injury break, he's like, Coach, he goes, I'm not going to take advantage. Just so you know, like, I'm not going to shoot. And he didn't. He was like, I'm not going to do that to him in case he has a chance to win states this year. And so I give a lot of credit to Andrew Benny. He literally 48 seconds left in that match. He just tied up with him, wasn't really aggressive. And he came off the mat. He's like, I'm sorry. I was like, no, I was like, your integrity is more important than any, thing that we can do as a team or win. So I really think that deserves recognition. And then our Josiah Gardner, bump it. He didn't bump up. But they had Huffman back in the lineup, who they didn't have earlier. 15-11 to win. So that's a match, obviously, that's flip-flopping all around. That's huge and exciting. And then, of course, we're kind of limited in our middleweights this year. We have a lot of injuries on our team in the middleweights this year. So we've never really been able to establish ourselves in those weights. But we had a journeyman senior who we bump up to 52. And, he's heavily, not favored. And gives up a major, so that allowed us to default the last match and win on criteria, 7 wins to 6. So again, then you could go in all the like super ins and outs, but that's pretty much the rundown of that match.
Okay, so right, so you coached junior high for 20 years, right? About that, how many years
Yeah,
was it?
21 years at Canon-Mcmillan Junior High.
What made you want to take over the varsity program?
Well, I wouldn't say I wanted to. That was never a super ambition of mine. I was kind of, when Coach Havelka resigned, I was kind of thinking I'd done enough at that moment. I'd been through 4 head coaches. We had accomplished a lot in those years. I have a lot of things going on in my own life. I'm an Orthodox Christian, so I do a lot of pilgrimages around the world. I go to the Holy Mountain, Athos, a lot. I have a lot of things going on in my church that I'm involved with. So, I have a second home in Florida with my wife. I still have, I have 3 children. 2 of them are adults, but I thought maybe I did enough. It's time to focus on some other things. And there was a lot of people in the community that thought that, I was a good person for the job, and they kind of pushed me in that direction. I kind of accepted it, applied, and lo and behold, I got it. And then once I got the job, of course, I got super focused and started building my staff, and having been with these particular guys that won this title this year. Literally, I was a novice youth coach and the junior high coach when these guys all started. So there were 7 kids, at least 7 kids on our team on Saturday who I was in their very first practice ever. And I remember calling their parents into the hallway and telling them, like, hey, if we stick together, because this is coming off the state titles around 2011, 12. This is that era, and I was heavily involved with that. And so I remember calling these novice group into the hall, the parents and kids, and said, hey, if we stick together, for a long time, we can do some fun, exciting things. And then by about 6th grade with this same group, I started to see we started winning club tournaments just with our guys. And it was exciting. And so then by 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I started to tell them, like, hey, I think we can win the Whippeal. I saw what Waynesburg was doing, but I was like, I think we can win one. And lo and behold, we did. So pretty exciting.
What changed? So you were 13-7 last year. You guys are now 14-2. What changed?
Well, I think just the kids, having the summer helped. I didn't get hired till late. It was a deeply involved, the wrestling program is very important in the Canonsburg community. So it was a very involved process of getting hired. I didn't get hired till late summer, going into that first year. So I didn't really get a full off-season program. I think the full off-season program really helped our team this year for sure. And just, you have to establish your groundwork that first year. We started lifting in the mornings. We started doing morning workouts, which I don't think the previous staff had a lot of. I'm not positive on all their ins and outs. I'm not going to compare, but there's a lot of things that we instituted: academic program, nutrition program, strength program, these types of things, freestyle program. That it took a while to get some momentum with, and I think we're starting to see that momentum this year, obviously. And then, of course, I think 3 of those losses, at least, were to Waynesburg last year. So overcoming one of those is big, right, when you're talking about records.
Right.
And I do a challenging schedule, and I'll do the same thing next year. Like, Waynesburg was moved out of our section. Our section, our Whippeal format changed this year. Waynesburg was moved out. So at home opener, we scheduled, Waynesburg coaches and I. Of course, I scheduled with Vince DeAugustine a Hempfield match during the season. I go to Collinsville duels to wrestle them. So, and then look at the last 4 teams this year in the Whippeal was those, and we had scheduled those. Those are all non-section matches. And I'm going to look to do the same thing next year. I'll find, you have to wrestle your section matches. Of course, we go to Ironman, King of the Mountain. We host Powerade. Those are all tough tournaments. So I challenge the kids. So wins and losses on my record is not what I'm looking for. I'm not like looking to be you look at my kids' records. I got kids ranked in the state with 6, 7, 8 losses. I'm looking to challenge these kids and to get them on the national scene, and then to be ready for Whippeals and states.
I agree. That's one thing. I'm in my 2nd year of coaching, and I really want to. I'm not the head coach, but Clarion Wrestling. We didn't have the strongest schedule last year, and this year it got a little stronger. And I think every year
I think that's of the utmost importance. A lot of people, when I first got the job and I threw Ironman back on there, and they started looking at the schedule, there was a lot of critics, even in my own community. They're like, you really have a team that's ready for that. And you might get these kids hurt and these types of things were said. And I said, I don't believe that. I don't think you get hurt wrestling national level kids. They know what they're doing. You kind of got to figure out what they're doing. It's just in and out business. It's real wrestling. I think you have a greater chance of getting hurt messing around with, first, second year, let's say like a football player, 189 pounder who doesn't really know how to wrestle. So you're expecting him to do this or that, and he falls the wrong way. You know what I mean? I think you're in more danger in those types of situations than wrestling at Ironman. If you're wrestling like a Bo Bass at a Jack's Force, they're going to take care of business. They're going to come out, they're going to work their takedowns, they're going to get tilts. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be as expected. Let's put it that way. But your kids learn, hey, that's the level of wrestling I would love to get to.
So when you first started coaching, you were also involved in the youth program?
So when I first started coaching in the late 90s, I was an assistant at the high school at Canon-Mcmillan. 97, 99, in the year 2000, I was an assistant head coach or assistant coach at the high school. In 2001, I went down to the junior high. I remained there. Fun fact there is that first year, 2001, Scott Rhodes was the head coach at Canonsburg Junior High, who's the assistant at Waynesburg. So consider him kind of a mentor, and we've remained close friends all these years. A little fun fact, while we were on the subject. But 2001 is when I first went to the junior high, remained there for the next 21 years. A couple years into that stint at we had a really good youth coach for a couple decades. Frank Snedeker is in the Hall of Fame. And then we kind of were changing every couple years. And we had a really good one when I first started, Jim Ammon, who was a big part of the 2012 team. But he got married and started having kids, young kids. And so he had to start moving on with his life. And I realized that we were going to have a gap coming up. So I took over for 10 years. So it was maybe a few years into my junior high stint that I took over the youth at the same time. And so I was the head coach of the youth for about 10 years, basically during this group's whole youth run. And it was pretty fun. And then I got really busy in my own personal life and I couldn't keep up everything. And so I passed it on to Steve Sapira, who's been there now and doing a great job.
Yep. One thing I noticed when I first came to Clarion, the youth team the culture wasn't quite there. So I'm coming in and trying to change some things for future success. And so how do you get parents to maybe buy into something different? Because some won't believe right away.
Yeah. So it's one thing that helps us for sure at Canon-Mcmillan is success. So, when I'm taking over the youth at that time, we're winning state titles in high school. So there's a lot of, excitement for the program. There's a lot of tradition here, but, you just gotta, I'm a list guy. I'm a notebook guy. I keep notes. This whole notebook's filled with everything. My whole plan. I'm a planner. And, I think you just gotta be consistent. You got to prove your consistency to your parents and your program and your kids, and you got to get them to buy into trusting the process. So in this day and age, it involves a lot of communication. The 1970s and 80s when, you had a landline and, maybe you ran into a coach once in a while face to face. That was the limits of communication. Now you have social media, you have texting, you have emailing. I mean, it's wide open. So I think one of my attributes is I'm a big communicator with the parents, the administrators, the community, the kids. And I think that's one of my attributes. I keep everyone informed, and I think they understand. And then once you get the ball rolling, I kind of communicate what I think is going to happen. And I was able to be right a lot of times. So they started to trust my consistency and my process. And then once they tasted a little success, like I said, with this particular group, it was around 5th or 6th grade. We started going to club tournaments with just our guys, and we won a couple. And it was then that the parents so then that led to wrestling freestyle. I was like, hey, the next step is we got to do this. The next step is we got to do that. And it was just like everything worked up to that point. So they were like, let's go, and the result is all the success that they're having.
Right now I'm working on convincing the youth parents to get into freestyle this spring. And then
I'm a huge believer in it. This is one thing I say to my parents and my kids. It's you sneak in another season. We had about between our boys and girls last year, we had just under 40 participants in the freestyle program. And that's just junior high and high school. Of course, we had probably another 25, 30 participating in youth. in freestyle. And, you sneak in another season, you get another 25, 30 matches. You get another state experience. For those who go out to the national level tournaments, the duels and the individuals, Fargo for the older kids, Indianapolis, Utah for the little kids, all the duels that they have all over the place. Girls are going to Tulsa, these types of things. It makes when you go to Fargo, it even makes states seem smaller. And that's what I try to tell these kids, like, hey, for some of you, states is such a big deal. But those who've wrestled at world team trials and national level tournaments like Fargo, and the girls are going out to Spokane, Washington this year, it starts to make that look smaller. State starts to become a stepping stone. And if Pennsylvania State starts to become a stepping stone to bigger things, then our regional tournaments become, just another event. Like, even that's why I go to Ironman. It makes WPIALs seem a lot less daunting. For some people, I look at their schedules, I'm like, man, WPIAL is literally the hardest. Individual WPIALs, team WPIALs is going to be the hardest event these kids are going to be in this year. Whereas my kids, they look at me and they're like, wow, okay, this is maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th hardest event we're in this year. So I think I'm a big proponent of that. But get back on your topic, the freestyle. In addition to that level of experience and level of competition, a huge thing I tell my program is it cleans up your neutral position, because as you and I both know, freestyle is about exposure, folk style is about control. So, you see a lot of successful folk style wrestlers who shoot with their head down, their hips out, they get into funky rolls and positions. Of course, in freestyle, there's points flying all around when you're doing that.
Yeah.
So you clean up your shots a lot. You only take shots when they matter. You get in, you get out. You don't shoot with your head down, your back bent, your hips out in freestyle because you get exposed, and that translates back to folk style. You see the kids who wrestle high level of freestyle, they come back, their shots are crisp, they're clean, they finish quick. That's a huge advantage to that also.
The best advice I got is one of my mentors, the head coach at our club here. He said, we have one kid
Who's the head coach at the club?
Well, we got a couple coaches. Braun Gorley owns it. Mason Gorley, he wrestles for us. He's at 152.
Yeah, I don't know him personally. I've heard the name.
We're double A, so you guys don't face him, but he's got a shot to place at states. And one of the coaches there told me that either one of his hardest match should be the semifinals of districts.
Right. Yes.
That's where I was like, we gotta start hammering, and
exactly.
We're gonna try to get into Powerade next year. I don't think we will unless he places at states this year. We're gonna have to prove it. But
yeah, and Frank's, Mr. Volcano is starting to let individuals in too, like Ironman does. Not that I'm not judging or knocking anybody, but there's ways. I'm sure it's expanding a lot. So
right, and
I hope you guys get in. I hope you guys get in.
I hope we do too. People, we don't have we might have 3 get past districts, but I think I see a lot more in these kids than other people do, and I kind of want to get after it. But I had one other topic, so it's my second year. I help with varsity youth and junior high. Yeah. And I've had people say that I have too much on my plate. But you coach varsity and girls. What do you think about that? Do you think it's good for younger coaches to be involved in all levels?
I think it's very important. I mean, are you married?
No kids either.
Okay, no married, no kids. So this is the time to do it. You know what I mean? And for your program, it's going to pay huge dividends. That's another thing about Canon-Mcmillan, and this has been going on for a century. It's not just during my time. I'm just carrying the torch right now. But Canon-Mcmillan is a very community-oriented wrestling program. So we're heavily involved together, K through 12, and even beyond. We have alumni out there doing great things. Jacob Haupt up at Kent State is doing great things now. He's cracked their lineup. Brendan Furman is back in the lineup at Cornell. Of course, Garrett Ninehouse out at Oklahoma. So this is a K through 12 and beyond program. But when we're talking about your topic, if you can get a young coach like yourself to be involved with all 3 levels, you start to become the bridge. You can communicate to the other youth coaches, youth parents, and wrestlers what the high school's doing, what their expectations are, what their technique is, what the verbiage is, because different people call moves different things. There's different styles of wrestling. So you can start to establish and lay that foundation, having the ties to all 3 levels. That's of the utmost importance, because if kids are learning your foundation of your, what you guys want to be doing in high school, the right verbiage, the style, the drills, the names of the drills, the technique of the drills, starting in kindergarten, first, second, third grade. Of course, by the time they get to ninth grade, it should be, fine tuning, details, blowing whistles, motivating, and then you carry that on through junior high, you start to layer it, so that's a huge advantage if they can get someone like you to be involved at all three levels. And of course, with the girls and the boys, I mean, it's a total commitment, but it pays huge dividends.
Bringing up girls, the girls are awesome. My first year, all we had was one girl on the
Yeah,
youth team, and I was like, we need more. And
yeah.
we're up to like I think around 12, and then
Wow.
our club has more than, so Clarion, and then we go
Sure.
to the club, and we
Yeah,
get other teams around the area who come to our club, and
yeah,
with the clubs, and we are like in between 15 to 20.
yeah.
Uh,
That's awesome.
why do you get involved with coaching girls?
Well, I met Valerie Solorio when she was 7 years old. She's now 17, so that was a decade ago. She showed up. That's when I was a youth coach, junior high and youth coach at the time. I meet her. Within 3 weeks, I recognized something in her that I hadn't really seen in other people. Just a grit, a tenacity, a willingness to like do whatever it takes to win. And this was in the practice. Like, so, if you go back 10 years, she's in a room with Andrew Binney, Tanner Mazanko, right? All the guys I have right now, that was her training partners. And it like it like did something inside of me. And of course, back then we were just going around, her and I, the team, and she's wrestling all boys everywhere we go, and she's winning, winning. And they started doing, we had the states out at Susquehanna Township High School back then, and she won some state titles. Her family, the dad, they have family all over the place: Colorado, Alabama, Florida. So he was, always working. They have restaurant chains. So he would go start restaurants. So they move around a good bit. But they have a couple up here in the Pittsburgh region, and he landed a really good job up here again. But that was the first spark, I would say. So for about 8 years, I kept mentioning I would love to start a girls' high school program, but it's a lot of work, and the previous staffs were just busy. We never really was able to get momentum. We couldn't find other girls that wanted to be involved. So when I got the head job last summer, it was literally the first thing I proposed. I went up to the school board. I went to the administrator, said, look, I think it's important that we start a girls wrestling program. And of course, PA sanction was gaining momentum at the time. So that helped. That was very helpful. And at the time I had one girl. It was a sibling, Hope Carmona. She came to my club. I have a club called Wrestling with Virtue. And this girl's like standing in the doorway watching, and I could tell like intensely. And I'm running the practice. I said, can I help you? She said, oh, I always wanted to wrestle. I was like, why aren't you wrestling? She goes, well, no one ever really gave me a chance. And I have these racks of shoes that people donate back. And I'm like, find a pair of shoes that fit. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you're coming to practice right now. And she did. She started that day. And so when I proposed it, they said, do you have any girls? I said, I got one. I literally had one at the start of our program. And within, I think 3 weeks, we were up to 16. And
Wow.
now we're above 30 in our high school program. We have another 8 or 9 in junior high, and we have at least, I ran a youth practice, all girls youth practice, actually the day of the Whitfield Championship, 6 p.m. that night, at because the match was at noon, and got done about 2, a little bit of celebrating. 6 p.m. that night, I had a practice scheduled for the first one of the year, just all girls youth. And I think I had 14 girls show up. And then I had the high school girls come and help them. It was really cool. And so I told them, the parents there, I said, I think we can turn 13 into 45 by middle of freestyle in youth. And it's just, the girls are very cerebral. And the thing about girls wrestling is they're there because they want to prove something, whatever it is. There's different, things. But the boys, it's either they've been doing it their whole life, their parents did it, there's reasons why, their friends wrestle or whatever. Girls are there to prove something. So they don't, I find they don't quit, they don't give up. They actually get motivated, and one girl turns into 3. That's why I told the youth parents, I said, 13 is going to turn into 45. Give me 2 months. And I know that in my heart, because every girl that joins my program brings 2 others like within 3 weeks, and then they don't leave. They love it. The girls are very cerebral, very technical. They're fun to teach. They love to learn. The boys, especially in high school, as I'm sure you're well aware of, it's a lot of psychology. You're pushing the right buttons every day to motivate them. Girls, you're literally teaching every day, and that's fun. And there's a good balance for me. So it's been refreshing and exciting and fun.
Yeah, we have no girls in high school, but we got one sixth grader coming up next year, and I
Yeah.
think it's gonna change a lot for Claire. And they haven't wanted to officially make a girls team, and we have no girls, so I understand. But
Yeah, of course.
next year we have one reason why you should start it. Very
Exactly. And
close
that's
to-
where it starts. Takes one. And that one will turn into three, three will turn into 12, and then you're off. You know what I mean?
Yep. Our youth team is stacked with girls, but I'm excited. We have one sixth grade. I'm excited for her to.
Well, and that's what I found last year. I went to the high school girls states, and I don't know how many girls were entered last year, but I bet you 70% of them, 75, maybe 80% even, were first year girls, second year girls at most. Then I went to junior high and youth states, and what you're seeing at that level is third, fourth, fifth year wrestlers, much like Valerie was at that age, and a lot more of them. Valerie was the only one back then for us. Um, you know, and so when that group, like the group you have, the group a lot of people have right now, get to high school and they're 6, 7, 8, 9 year wrestlers. I mean, Pennsylvania girls wrestling is going to be unbelievable. I mean, it's no secret Pennsylvania is a great wrestling state. If you just look at the tradition, the depth of qualified coaches and clubs and high schools that have good coaches and programs, and in other states, people drive 65 miles each way to find a good coach or a club or a good partner. If you drive 65 miles in Pennsylvania, you probably went past 12 clubs that were quality clubs with quality coaches, quality partners, quality, our density of opportunity in Pennsylvania is just going to benefit these girls, and they're just going to go through the roof. I mean, I expect Olympians to be coming out of Pennsylvania, much like the boys have been producing for generations, real soon and often through Pennsylvania.
That's one thing I'm noticing through youth and junior high girls. They're the depth quite isn't there in high school. One thing I've noticed, but the depth's coming. There are a
Oh
couple
yeah.
12-year-olds at that girl women's wrestling tournament.
Yeah. And you
That
heard Sally Roberts say it at the event. Steiner, our national level coaches, they know the best girls are still coming. You
they're
know what I
coming.
mean? They're coming.
Yeah, but you don't know the names because I mean they're 12, so they're not out there.
Exactly.
I know I interviewed a 12-year-old there from Wyoming
Oh
Seminar.
yeah, she's unbelievable.
She was almost beat Aubrey Crazer, who's ranked
Yeah,
fourth.
yeah, she's unbelievable.
She
I've
was
watched her
exciting.
a few times now.
So you brought up wrestling with virtue. I looked it up, but can you explain what wrestling with virtue is and what role does faith play within your coaching?
Yeah, so I've been coaching like Josiah Gardner, we mentioned in the Waynesburg match. I coach his older brother Cree, his younger brother Giano, and his youngest brother Rocco is in our program also. So the Gardner family is a very faithful family in our community. I've been involved with them for a long time. His father bought the armory in our town. Waynesburg had a National Guard little base, and so did Canonsburg. Well, they joined and built a new facility closer to Waynesburg. So the facility it was left behind, called the Armory in Canonsburg, this beautiful building, huge brick building, was for sale. J.R. Gardner was literally walking the streets, praying one night, saw the for sale sign, called it. Of course, it was a government line. And within months, one thing came to another through prayer and good people, and he was able to purchase the building through Youth for Christ Foundation. Started a community center there. Not immediately, but within a year or so, approached me about starting a wrestling program there. And I was at the time, like we were talking before, I'm married, I have 3 kids, I have a pretty busy personal schedule. I'm coaching junior high and youth at the time. I'm like, oh, I would love to. It's a great, it's an amazing idea, but I just don't have the time. So for a couple of years, I kept recommending people. He's like, it's you, it's got to be you. You're the one. So a couple of years in, I said, and that's when I'd started to back away from the youth program. I said, I think I'm going to give this a try. I like the idea of a multitude of reasons. Well, first of all, A huge part was this. I started seeing through my own competition days and through those great years we had at Canon-Mcmillan and just all around wrestling, I started seeing like tragic stories after wrestling. When wrestling ended for like, I mean, 2, 3 time state champs, nationally ranked kids, I seen like divorces and families, tragic stories. You know, my best friend who was a state champ in high school, he ended up dying at 40. You know, I had one who was in prison, one in rehab. These were state champs that were teammates of mine. We had some great wrestlers come through our program that I was seeing tragic stories when wrestling ended. And so this affected me a lot. And so I really started to contemplate this. And I realized that wrestling is such an intense, time involved process to get to that level that when it's gone, there's such a vacuum
Mhm.
that needed to be addressed. And so I know we all say it like, oh, wrestling is about life and it teaches you life lessons and it does this and it does that for you. And I didn't have the proof of that. And I told my wife, there's no way I can go look at a 5-year-old kid who's starting wrestling and say wrestling is going to make your life better, because I'd seen so many stories of the guys at the highest level of this sport that was not true. And so I came up this concept with where we had to bring virtue training, character training, development into sports. And of course, my sport mainly is wrestling. So wrestling with virtue, I literally painted 110 virtues on the wall at our club. And every day we do our wrestling stuff, but we give a lessons on the virtues. So it's not like we're just saying this is going to happen to these kids. We're literally painting it on the wall. We're handing out paperwork on it. We're developing the training of character and virtue training and development into the program. Like they know it's a part of it. There are kids in my wrestling and virtue program who don't compete in wrestling, but their parents want them to have the character development. Like not just say, hey, you got to set goals, but help them develop strategies to accomplish these goals. Help them start to learn about time management that can feed into those strategies to develop these goals. And if the goals aren't working out, how many times you had a first year wrestler say, I want to be a state champ this year. You and I know that's an impractical goal, but I don't crash that goal. But at the end of the year, when they don't even make it to states, I say, hey, this is time to sit down and reevaluate our goals. He's like, yeah, you're right, coach. Like next year, I just want to make it to states, and then they start to develop, and that's okay. I explained to them. And so that's where the dream for the wrestling with virtue came. And it's been extremely successful, and I'm not, I'm financially invested. It's not like I'm one of these clubs that's going to have 65 kids in the room based on, hey, I'm going to make your kid a state champion, this and that. But the quality of family, the quality, because we say the Lord's Prayer at the end of every practice. So, it's a different atmosphere. Some people want their kids to sort. We've been through this for years in Pennsylvania. Some of, and you and I have both seen it. I've been involved for all my life with Pennsylvania wrestling. Some kids are outright abused physically and mentally and emotionally to attain wrestling goals. And at our club, we're not willing to do that. I'd rather them be straight A students, healthy minds, healthy body, healthy souls, and maybe make it to states and be successful the whole rest of their lives as, parents, uh, husbands, wives, business owners, and business employees, contributors to society. I'd rather see that than these wrestling accolades. Kind of like Andrew Binney when he said, I'm not going to shoot on him, coach. Just this is, if I win this match, it's going to be based on this score. And I was like, nothing but integrity, right? One of the virtues, and it shows with the kids that have been with me for a long time. So that's kind of the premise of the Wrestling with Virtue program. And it's amazing. Bo Nichols come, Yanni. There's been people that just show up, Roman Bravo, Young, and it's like almost like Field of Dreams. It's like build it and they will come.
Yeah.
These people sometimes show up unannounced because they see what I'm doing, and that's pretty awesome reinforcement. They tell the kids this is what's important, And again, these are Olympians and national champions, and they're telling my kids when they come in, like, stick with this guy, on that, the character development, the virtue training, and that's important, and it feels good.
I like that line. It gives me a lot of hope because recently had a parent leave because I don't wrestle enough live in my practices, or
Sure.
I don't promote enough competition. So unfortunately, they didn't agree with that, so they left. And they're first year parents. So
On that note, real quick, for the last 10 practices before that Whitfield championship, the team Whitfield championship, we barely wrestled live for 2 weeks. And I told my staff, the kids were drilling for an hour and 20 minutes every day. I mean, like I've never seen anyone drill. It was the most amazing thing. And I told my staff, like, if we win, it's because of these kids. Like they didn't even realize it. I mean, hour and 20, you know how hard it, like, getting kids to drill past 20, 25 minutes without them being like, come on, man, like it's hard. These kids on this group, they were drilling for an hour and 20, 25 minutes every day. And then we would flow wrestle for 12 minutes and then condition for 10 practices in a row. We barely wrestled live. Now, the last couple of days, we've almost just exclusively been wrestling live with very little drilling. But, on that note, maybe take that to that parent or whatever. I mean, drilling done right between two people is better than live wrestling. There's no doubt about it.
I agree. And I try to teach these lessons, and it gets hard, when the parents get frustrated,
I know.
and I have to give a little, but that's one thing I won't give on, and I get like this is advice I'm getting from like you, or Dave Cleffer from Brookville.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
He's given me some advice, and I just go with it, and I'm like, okay, then like last year, my first year, I just basically ran it like we're gonna draw, we're just gonna do live, and now we do live once a week, maybe. And most of
Sure.
the time, with the youth team specifically, I'll ask the kids, hey, do you guys want to wrestle live? And they'll all say yes or no, and I'll just go with it. And I
Yeah.
think
Sure.
I just think that's the healthy way to go with it. My thing
For
is
sure.
I haven't proven myself as a coach. I'm 25 and I've only coached for 2 years. So
Yeah. Well, establish your program. Establish your boundaries and stay within those boundaries. And over time, consistency, the results will come, and there will be people that come and go. There'll be people that leave that don't agree with your process, and that's okay. Eventually you will build a following that does buy into, and if you stick with it and consistently, it'll happen. And then within your boundaries, you're just be direct, but be kind. You don't have to get in confrontations or controversies with these other people that don't agree with you. You don't have to get into Twitter wars. Like I stay out of that stuff. When people come into my personal circle, people even tell me on face, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that. And I'm like, hey, that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you. While you're here though, these are the rules. And if you leave, I'm not going to fight for you or chase you. I'm not going to chase your kids. But these are my boundaries, and I'm direct and I'm kind within those boundaries, and that's just it. I stay in my lane, and people will come and go. People will say bad things. I've been bashed all over Twitter for my whole career. Facebook, newspapers, social media. I don't pay attention. I keep a low profile. I'm direct and kind, and I believe in my own process. So that would be my advice to any coach, especially I remember being 25 and getting hammered by people like, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're doing, and just stuck to my guns. And here I am 26 years later, and it's been a great journey.
I got one more question for you, then I'll let you go, Coach.
No problem.
How would you manage an unmotivated athlete? Like say a kid who has a natural talent or not and just isn't motivated to get better. How would you manage that?
Yeah, so my I'm a very I'm a people person. So my biggest advice there is bridge the gap. Every individual in this world is different. You got to try to look them in the eye, bridge the gap, start to learn who they are. When it comes to the athletes, the young kids, and if they want to be in your program, look them in the eye, start to learn who each one of them are, develop that relationship. Feed. This is what I tell. This is what I would say. And this is what we do. We work on our weaknesses privately together, and we display our strengths in public. But as far as motivation, you got to figure out what motivates that kid first, and that takes developing a relationship, which takes looking them in the eye, communicating with them, kind of being vulnerable a little bit. I'm not Superman. I'm not God. I'm just a person, just like you are. when I'm bridging these gaps, be vulnerable. I have strengths, I have weaknesses. And then they start to see that coach, hey, coach, my mentor, my coach has strengths and weaknesses. So it's okay to reveal my strengths and weaknesses. Then we start to say, okay, now we can work on those weaknesses privately together. And then when we're in a heated situation upstairs in competition, something, we're going to go for our strengths, right? So be vulnerable, create relationships, look people in the eye, communicate, open up to people, get them to open up to you. And that's the only way you're going to truly know how to motivate them. Some people, I need to yell at to motivate. Some people I need to give a pat on the back. It's different with every single kid on this program. And it's actually a fun part for me when we're at the back of the line, sending the kid out. Some kids want to pray with me. Some kids want slapped in the face. Some kids want a hug. Some kids want to shake hands. Some people just want to see me, confident in them. Others want to be like, hey, you got to do this. But it took years to look them in the eye, show my vulnerability, get them to reveal their vulnerabilities, learn who they are, let them learn who I am, to get to that moment 10 years later, to know the button to push at that moment, the biggest moment for them. And then when they're young, and you guys probably all see this, I'm a pretty calm coach, right? In competition, they win, I'm like, okay, your hard work paid off. They lose, hey, we just had an opportunity to learn. When they're young, I think, some parents, some coaches and actually all the way through, because even high school kids are young, let's face it. Our best high school kids go to a great college, they're just one of the guys, right? They might be the worst. Our best kid might be the worst kid on Penn State's team, right? You know what I mean? So they're young in high school still. But when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I think we as parents and coaches need to find a better balance of emotion.
Oh yeah.
That little 7, 8-year-old loses, first person they look at is their parent. If they see their parent devastated, crying, punching walls and stuff, that's what they start to associate with the sport. But with me, my students know they win, they look over, I just give them that look like, great job, your hard work paid off. They lose a bad match, they look over like, don't worry, we're going to learn from that. It's the same emotional reaction. And they know that the process is going to be the same. We're going to learn from our losses. And, we got to encourage the other kid we just beat to keep going. So I tell them like, hey, thank that person, don't belittle them, keep at it, because without that person, you didn't have an opponent right there, right? If you're like a 10th year wrestler, #1 in the nation, and you just beat a first year kid in the ground and he quits, we just lost one more wrestler, right? So we got to be encouraging to those other kids. And when we lose, we got to thank them too. Like, wow, you gave me motivation to get better. Like,
That might be the main thing I changed from last year. My first year, I was a little too talkative in the corner. I'm talking youth specifically, and this year,
Sure.
I do little to no talking, and the parents yell out high crotch tilt, and they'll yell
Yeah,
moves that the kid doesn't even
I
know,
know.
and so and I
People have knocked me for years for being too quiet in the corner, but I think I've proven, I've had a lot of success. So, especially with youth, I think people coaching them through situations is slightly overrated,
yeah.
because they've got to learn and develop. They're not a puppet. It's not a video game. They've got to learn who they are too. And I'm a note taker. Everyone sees me with my pencil and my papers, and I'm taking notes on every kid. And when we get into the room, that's what I'm addressing. Our drills, and I talk to them about everything that happened, good or bad, what worked and why it worked, what didn't work and why it didn't work. And we work on that in private again, So publicly, people have knocked me for years, like, you need to motivate these. You got to get louder. Why aren't you in my kid's corner? Why aren't you yelling out moves? I've had that stigma for years, but we've had 12 high school state champs. We've gotten Division I scholarships to Ivy Leagues for years now, and other big schools. I think I had something like 32 youth state champs. You know what I mean? So I'm like, hey, like I said, here's my boundaries. Here's who I am. I'm not going to change for anyone else.
They call that coaching in the corner or coaching in the room, and I think you prefer to coach in the room, and me also. I
Absolutely.
was criticized for parent just said, the kid lost. They're like, why don't you teach him while it's fresh on his mind? And I'm like, I just prefer to not talk to the kid, because they just use other coaches as an example. Other coaches just pull the kid aside, show him moves, and
Some
I
people
prefer
like to be
not to
loud and
talk.
brash and get 100 kids in there. There's people out there profiting off of
Yeah,
sports. You know
agreed.
what I mean? And there's people helping. This is what I tell my kids right now. We're using wrestling to better ourselves. We're not letting wrestling use us to exist, you know? So I'm not there for profit. I'm there. My profit, my treasure is the kids becoming the best, maximizing their potential, you know?
Well, that was awesome. That last part might be my favorite part because I tell parents I don't want to talk to your like I'll tell them like if they're on a double and they're not running your feet, I'll say run your
Of
feet.
course. Yeah,
Other
of
than
course.
that, I prefer not to talk much. I don't
Right.
argue with referees. I might actually make that a rule.
Yeah.
In my room, you don't argue with referees, but
Right.
like high schools, youth kids don't really do it,
Yeah, if
but
there's one ref on a mat, he's not changing his call. You know,
yeah.
you get the freestyle, it's different. There's mat judges. Hey, ref, can you ask the mat judge what he saw? And if the mat judge saw what you saw, maybe they'll change it. But when there's one ref out there, they're not changing.
I think there should be video review in postseason in high
Oh, that would
school.
be awesome. That
And
would be
just
awesome.
postseason, I get it regular season, some
No, I
schools.
wish there was. Then you might be able to say, hey, take it to the video.
That's
But when
what,
there's one ref out there alone, arguing is just going to get under their skin.
yeah, agreed. Well, it's very motivating.
Thank you.
You gave me a lot of hope for the future here at Clarion.
I hope so.
You'll be seeing us as the #1 team in the state one day.
I love it. I look forward to it. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to many more encounters.
Good luck. I'll be watching you guys this weekend.
Appreciate you.
Good luck at the state tournament.
All right. Have a great day.
Yep,
Yep.
bye.